I think that their problem was that even though that they were communal, but it was very egoistic. They locked themselves inside, they didn't allow anyone to come in, and if they did, then it was through hard labor. So, what's interesting about kibbutz members is that they have two as if counter qualities. They really want the togetherness, the connection, the kibbutz, but closed inside themselves and they don't open outwards. And it's a result of the hard life, and it came as a result of many doubts and fears and suspicion towards everything going on the outside, the desire to protect themselves. It's not that, God forbid, I'm blaming them for something. They are people with a very hard character, even though that it is a collective kind of character. And we see that these two coincide in them. And I think that the problem was that they thought that it is possible to pass the kibbutz idea from father to son. They didn't understand that it can't be passed on this way, as it says that the Torah isn't passed in heritage. Yeah, from what I read, the disillusionment came when they watched their children fighting, each for his own toy and so on. From what I read, they felt a sense of anguish that despite their efforts to pass on the qualities of communality onto their children, it didn't. Human nature. Man's nature is evil from the very start. That's how it is. They approach human nature like what I later on experienced in social Russia, that they thought that it's possible to change human nature by education, meaning the claims of capitalism that you're doing something which is against human nature were correct. Of course. And that's why capitalism survived. It also reached an end, like anything else in the world. But capitalism, it followed that very nature which at that time bursted out of people, that was revealed in people, which is the simple, egoistic, direct, revealed force which a person uses, of course, in a certain framework and according to certain laws, but it was possible. Meaning they did not take into consideration that their children aren't born ready with the kibbutz ideals. And you can't educate for that. It's impossible to educate for that. Because from generation to generation, there's a big leap in terms of the change in human nature and ego, because that's human nature, both in quantity and in quality. And what they thought and did with their children, what was good for them was no longer good for the children. It didn't work. And gradually the entire method came to an end, exhausted itself. It was hard to accept it. The country kept them for a long time. They had big debts. I don't know how, but let's put it this way. The last few years of the kibbutz, and the end of the 70s, early 80s, they lived a lot at the expense of the country. And also it caused a kind of a collision between them and the general atmosphere in Israel. I remember that when I discovered it, it was very unpleasant to see these things. It was a very egoistic cooperative, meaning aside from our kibbutz, we don't care about anything. Everything else can burn. Only self-preservation, even though that they got many benefits from the country, on the one hand. On the other hand, they were strong people, strong soldiers. Back then, they really filled all the commanding positions in the army and so on. Like any other situation, you can look at it from different angles. However, human nature is changing. Man is an animal which changes from one generation to the next. And therefore, there's no real point talking about it. In our times, it barely exists in a way that you can call it a kibbutz, meaning an inner connection according to the inner desire, according to the inclination to be together. It's something completely different. It's a kind of a cooperative. There is even an urban kibbutz. There are different such forms, only in order to get some benefits from the country, pay less taxes, and so on. And therefore, they built these kinds of collective forms. But really, the original kind of the kibbutz no longer exists. And the thing is that the first people, they were very strong. I know, suppose that we wanted, when I came, we wanted to join a kibbutz. It was in 1974. And when my wife saw that she has to give up our child, who's 2 years old, and to see him once a day for half an hour, I don't know how long, she didn't agree. And this was one of the main problems. In many kibbutzes back then, they demanded that the children be educated together, completely separately from the parents, and that's incorrect, really incorrect. We also know, according to researches, how much evil it puts into a person later on. It really creates a distortion in his attitude towards life. Even if you fill him with all riches, but he doesn't feel his mother's warmth, that she's next to him, that she cares for him. We're animals, one way or another, and it has to be like it is in nature. So to this day, the kibbutz is no longer in crisis. I think that's incorrect. It's not the same kibbutz, but only the name is left maybe, like a showcase, externally wise, but on the inside, of course, it's completely different things. And I've examined several times the option of joining a kibbutz with our society, and I saw that they didn't accept us. No one accepted us. They said, "Where were you 20, 30 years ago?" Meaning they saw that we're as if dinosaurs, even though that we consider ourselves to be new, having a new spirit in this respect, which is based on a special force, which we derive as a result of our connection. And by this special force, we can invert anyone, turn anyone into a kibbutz member, not according to what they considered a kibbutz member, but according to human nature. But that spirit, nonetheless, to some extent, dwells in the country, and I very much respect this movement, even though that today it's neither in that or in this direction. It's not like it was in the past. That time's over, everything changed, and neither in the new direction, that they want to reinvent themselves. They already know and understand that they survive as much as they can this way, and if not, then here and there You see signs of privatization, and gradually they're changing their form.